On the evening of March the 1st of 2023, 101-year-old veteran Herbert Muskin and his wife Sherry were on their way home after shopping at a store in Las Vegas, Nevada. The elderly couple were driving near Stephanie Street and Sunset Road when they were struck by a stolen black Mercedes-Benz, which had been fleeing from the police. The three women in the car, 29-year-old Cassandra Alvarez, 31-year-old Lorraine Alvarado, and an unidentified woman, were trying to get away after robbing a sporting goods store. Officers attempted a high-risk vehicle stop, but the driver refused to comply and instead accelerated. As police continued the chase, an officer deployed a tire deflation device on the freeway. The stolen vehicle drove over it but continued to travel further, exiting the freeway and entering Sunset Road. While taking a turn towards Stephanie Street, the driver of the Mercedes-Benz crashed into Muskin and his wife's car. Alvarado then stepped out of the vehicle from the passenger side and started running away with a pistol in hand. Police chased her on foot, and as the woman eventually turned round, she pointed her gun at them, prompting both pursuing officers to discharge their weapons. Alvarado was injured, fell to the ground, and was taken into custody. At the scene of the collision, Muskin and his wife were taken to the hospital, while the other two suspects in the getaway car were arrested, facing multiple charges including robbery, battery, and grand larceny of a motor vehicle. During the accident, the 101-year-old veteran suffered a broken neck and was left in critical condition. After Muskin passed away on the 30th of March, Alvarez, Alvarado, and their accomplice were also charged with murder. Number 8. Edward Hopkins and Tony Mitchell. On September the 12th of 2019 at around 11:30 a.m., Edward Hopkins and Tony Mitchell, both in their early 40s, carried out an armed robbery at the First State Bank of Louise in Texas. The two men drove off in a Dodge Challenger, fleeing the scene with an undisclosed amount of cash. They were intercepted by a police car and an officer attempted a traffic stop, but Hopkins, who was in the driver's seat, refused to comply. He swerved around the patrol car and kept driving onto US 59 north towards Nacogdoches, reaching speeds of 130 miles per hour as more police cars joined the chase. Just as the Dodge Challenger crossed the Nacogdoches city limits near Woodlands Hills Golf Course, one of the tires was punctured by a spike strip and Hopkins lost control of the vehicle. He veered off the road and the car hit a power pole before going airborne and crashing into a tree. The Dodge Challenger was severely damaged, with the engine catching on fire and breaking away its body. The stolen money was retrieved from the mangled wreck along with a loaded pistol and several magazines. Hopkins died on the spot, whereas Mitchell was not found in the vehicle at the time of the accident. Updates indicated he was captured by the FBI about a week later. Number 7. Stephen Mercado. In June of 2012, 32-year-old Stephen Mercado walked into Susquehanna Bank in New Jersey undisguised and armed with a garden hose spray nozzle. The man didn't draw attention to himself and instead quietly handed a teller a note demanding money. After bank personnel handed Mercado the cash, he left and got into his getaway car, a burgundy Ford Taurus. The man then drove off, but soon experienced trouble as his vehicle ran out of gas. In an ill-advised attempt to salvage the situation, he pulled into the parking lot of AG Auto Group and called for a taxi. While waiting for his ride, Mercado lay down across the front seats to avoid detection, but the police arrived at his location before his taxi. Officers collided with a jewelry store sign on their way towards the bank robber and then ordered him to step out of the vehicle. Mercado was arrested as soon as he exited the Taurus and he was charged with armed robbery. Number 6. Incident in South Africa. In August of 2017, two masked men walked into a petrol station in the Western Cape province of South Africa and threatened the staff with assault rifles. They cleared the workers from behind the counter before several more of their accomplices entered the building, holding the store at gunpoint and preventing staff from raising the alarm. Using crowbars, two of the robbers struggled to pry loose a large safe and then carried it outside. As captured by CCTV, they then forced some of the staff members to help with loading it in the trunk of their getaway car. Due to its large size and heavy weight, the safe couldn't properly fit inside the vehicle and the robbers only managed to rest it on the lip of the trunk. One of the men then signaled to the driver to drive off, but as he accelerated, the safe fell out of the car and onto the ground. It wasn't made immediately clear whether or not the robbers succeeded or were forced to leave the safe at the scene. Number 5. Jesse Medrano. California Highway Patrol were alerted about a disabled vehicle on the 105 freeway in Paramount on October the 6th of 2021. As officers checked the license plates of the abandoned Toyota Sienna, they discovered the vehicle had been reported stolen. They identified the driver as 35-year-old Jesse Medrano. The man had been on the run since October the 3rd, after allegedly shooting 3 of his relatives in Green Meadows, Los Angeles. The incident resulted in the death of his 61-year-old father, Ruben Marufo, and the wounding of his uncle Ricardo Graeva and his wife, Gloria Medrano. Mariana Graeva, the couple's daughter, had witnessed the attack and told law enforcement that Medrano appeared to be under the influence of drugs at the time. A confrontation ensued after officers had found Medrano and his broken-down getaway car. The man pulled out a handgun and refused to put it down when ordered to do so by law enforcement. He then started shooting, and the officers fired back. During the exchange, Medrano was shot down and left in critical condition. He was taken by ambulance to an area hospital where he was pronounced dead. Number 4. John Figueroa Jr. On March 29th of 2023, at around 11:40 a.m., California law enforcement received reports about a reckless driver in a Toyota Corolla in the Newell area of Santa Clarita. Officers encountered the driver and chased after him on the 1-5 freeway at Halsey Canyon Road until the man crashed his vehicle. The pursuit didn't end there, however, as the suspect then carjacked a California Highway Patrol vehicle and took off at high speed. Officers followed him for approximately 40 miles before the man opened the door and jumped out in the Lancaster area. While the cruiser was moving at around 70 miles per hour, surveillance footage showed him as he hit his head hard and slid several feet down the 138 freeway. The police car continued traveling without the driver inside and only came to a stop once it crashed into a power pole on a grassy area next to the freeway. The driver was rushed to the hospital where he succumbed to his injuries a few hours later. A week after the chase, police identified the man as 32-year-old John Figueroa Jr. A California Highway Patrol spokesperson said that it was unclear how Figueroa Jr. had managed to steal the cruiser, as it was standard procedure for officers to lock their vehicles while they were running. Number 3. Incident in China. In December of 2014, a security guard working at a bank in Huludao, China, was carrying a large bag of cash. Through the revolving doors of the building, a man came up to him holding a gun, later determined to have been a replica, and demanded he hand over the bag, reported to have contained approximately $232,000. The security guard complied, and the unnamed robber tried picking up the 182-pound bag from the ground, but he was unable to do so. He then started dragging it. As he walked to his motorbike parked nearby, the man struggled to lift the bag in order to place it onto the back of his motorbike, but before he could balance it, he was surrounded by police. An officer shot the man in the leg and took him into custody. The robber later told the media that he regretted what he'd done and promised to be on his best behavior towards his parents and wife if he would ever be released. Number 2. Isaiah John Galatly. Law enforcement in Happy Valley, Vancouver, Canada, received a call about a car theft in progress on the night of November the 19th of 2018. A patrol officer responded to the incident and found 31-year-old Isaiah John Galatly inside a parked 1998 Honda Accord. Galatly was lying down in the fully reclined driver's seat attempting to hide, but he was discovered as the officers shined a flashlight into the vehicle. The man quickly sat up and started the car, fleeing the scene. The officer chased after him with his siren and emergency lights on, while radioing for assistance. Another police crew joined in the pursuit and placed spike strips in the road. One of the tires on the Honda was punctured, but that didn't stop Galatly from trying to get away. The man continued speeding through stop signs and even crossed over into oncoming traffic. He then turned into a business complex as he seemingly struggled to control the vehicle. While the car was still moving, the 31-year-old jumped out and attempted to run away, but he was caught between a wall and the out-of-control Honda. The impact left the fumbling thief with a broken leg. Galatly was arrested on suspicion of attempting to elude police, reckless driving, unlawful entry into a motor vehicle, and theft. Officers searched the car and found multiple items believed to have been stolen, including designer sunglasses, a Schwinn scooter, a tennis racket, and a ping-pong paddle. We have 8 women who tried to flee justice coming up right after this, in case you hadn't seen that episode yet. Number 1. George Jones. 31-year-old George Jones and 2 accomplices parked two vans in front of a supermarket in Longfield, Kent, England. In the early hours of April the 6th of 2023, one of the vehicles was used to break through the store's front window. In an attempt to pull an ATM out of its frame and steal it, the robbers then attached the machine to the other van's chassis bars. When they tried to drive away with the ATM, the chassis bar was ripped off. The three men consequently abandoned the theft and drove away in their vehicles. As part of the getaway plan, they switched to a third van, which was later tracked down by Kent police on the M25. The drivers led officers on a high-speed chase, but the pursuit ended in a park in Banstead, Surrey, where the men left the vehicle. The suspects were followed on foot, and officers managed to drag Jones out from under a bush, where he was attempting to hide. He was taken into custody and later jailed for 4 years and 9 months at Maidstone Crown Court after pleading guilty to charges of conspiracy to burgle and dangerous driving. Number 8. Nina Morano and Lisa Dykes. 23-year-old Maricela Botello Valadez disappeared on October the 5th of 2020 after traveling from Seattle to Texas to visit a friend. She'd gone out in Dallas's Deep Ellum Entertainment District and was last seen on surveillance video leaving a club in the company of a man whom the authorities identified as 30-year-old Charles Anthony Beltran. He lived in the same Mesquite home with married couple Nina Morano and Lisa Dykes. All three would later be charged with the murder of Botello Valadez, whose body was found in a wooded area of Wilmer roughly 5 months after she'd gone missing in March of 2021. The young woman had been stabbed to death before her remains were discarded. Detectives used cell phone records to determine that Botello Valadez was at the trio's home on the last date she was known to be alive. A search of the residence revealed blood stains beneath the carpet, which had recently been cleaned. The blood proved to be a match for the victim. Beltran remained in prison, but Morano and Dykes each posted the $500,000 bond for their release. At around Christmas in 2021, they both cut off their ankle monitors and fled Texas. The FBI, working in conjunction with international agencies, eventually tracked Morano and Dykes down to Cambodia. Local law enforcement took them into custody and they were brought back to the US 2 months after they'd fled house arrest. Their new bond, as of June 2022, was set at $4 million. Number 7. Simone Gonzalez. In the spring of 2016, the parents of a California woman called the police on her after she'd smashed the window of their home with a brick and attempted to run them over in her Chevy Tahoe SUV. The incident, during which no injuries were reported, occurred in Pasadena, and 32-year-old Simone Gonzalez subsequently fled from responding law enforcement. She led them on a chase on the 101 freeway, during which she drove it up to 100 miles per hour. The police decided to abandon the pursuit and later caught up with Gonzalez outside the Lexington Comedy Club in downtown Los Angeles. By that point, a reporter from a local news outlet had already approached Gonzalez and started filming her. They asked why she'd attempted to flee justice, to which Gonzalez responded with a series of incoherent ramblings. Her utterances included calling the reporter a slave trader and accusing them of injecting her with an illegal substance, as well as claims that she was a member of the army, a police officer, and a firefighter. Then, as officers got close to her, Gonzalez started removing her clothes. She got completely naked and started screaming about being a victim of police brutality. The reporter's video, which was widely shared online in the aftermath, ended with officers placing handcuffs on the nude Gonzalez and then picking some of her clothes off the street. The woman, who had a history of mental health problems, was medically cleared and booked on a $75,000 bail at the Century Regional Detention Facility. Some of her felony charges included assault with a deadly weapon, evading, and reckless driving. Number 6. Elaine Maxwell. British socialite Elaine Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years in prison for human trafficking and other related offenses in the summer of 2022, in the aftermath of a highly publicized case also involving her late partner, Jeffrey Epstein. Maxwell, who was alleged to have worked as a chief recruiter for Epstein in the 1990s, had her home in Bradford, New Hampshire, raided by the FBI on July the 2nd of 2020. Maxwell was reported to have exhibited troubling behavior during the raid. She ignored the agent's direction to open the door after they'd announced themselves as law enforcement and quickly fled to another room in the house, shutting the door behind her. As the agents conducted a search of the home, they found a cell phone wrapped in tin foil on a desk, which they determined had been a misguided effort on Maxwell's part to avoid being monitored by the authorities. A security guard at the $1 million home, nicknamed Tucked Away, told the FBI that Maxwell hadn't left the address and instead asked him to make purchases for the property. The agents described Maxwell's behavior as that of someone skilled at living in hiding and fleeing justice. That aspect, coupled with the fact that the disgraced socialite held 3 passports, was argued by prosecutors as a reason why Maxwell shouldn't be granted bail. Number 5. Christy Lynn Woods. Since 2011, Oregon woman Christy Lynn Woods had been arrested roughly 38 times, leading up to a 2018 incident involving an ambulance joyride. Of the over 100 charges on her extensive criminal record, most had been for harassment, criminal mischief, violating parole, and disorderly conduct. Jail records indicated that in mid-September of 2018, the Roseburg resident got into an unattended ambulance while the paramedics were busy trying to revive an unconscious woman. Woods then drove the emergency vehicle through downtown Roseburg before going on Interstate 5. She refused to stop for local law enforcement and led them on a 30-mile chase, reaching speeds of up to 85 miles per hour. She slammed into a police vehicle, causing major damage and minor injuries to a state police sergeant. The authorities used a spike trip to bring the ambulance to a halt and then took Woods into custody. According to an affidavit, as she was being transferred to Douglas County Corrections, the 37-year-old tried to shift the blame of her joyride on the paramedics by stating, "Why would they leave it unlocked?" Woods maintained her seemingly unaffected disposition in the latest of her numerous mugshots as she smiled into the camera. For her latest foray into crime, the woman was booked on 14 charges, including assault, interfering with paramedics, criminal mischief, and reckless driving. Number 4. Erin Holdsworth. An intoxicated woman engaged law enforcement in Hiram, Ohio in a chase in October of 2011, in which she pushed her vehicle to nearly 128 miles per hour, which was roughly 65 miles above the speed limit. The police had tried to stop Erin Holdsworth, who was in her late 20s at the time, for speeding, but she refused to obey their commands. Her vehicle was ultimately brought to a halt after officers had laid down stop sticks that forced the driver's side tires to deflate. As reported by Bainbridge Police Chief John Bokovitz, Holdsworth was barely able to stand up upon getting out of her car. Adding to the woman's disheveled appearance was the fact that she was only wearing a white thong and a fishnet top that was completely see-through. She was caught on dash cam video making her way to the police officers with her arms raised. Although initially reported as cooperative, further footage from the October the 11th arrest would show the handcuffed Holdsworth becoming aggressive and agitated in the back of the police cruiser. She started screaming and trying to break the vehicle's partition glass by kicking and bashing her head against it. Holdsworth was eventually jailed for 18 months after being convicted of operating a vehicle while intoxicated, driving with a suspended license, and fleeing and eluding. Number 3. Linda Roberts and Mary Beth Tomaselli. On the morning of March the 6th of 2015, the emergency services were called to the Florida home of 85-year-old Anthony Tomaselli, who was found dead by his daughters Linda and Mary Beth. The former claimed that she'd unsuccessfully tried to apply CPR and the death wasn't considered suspicious, considering the man's age and previous bout with cancer. Natural causes remained the official verdict for roughly 4 years. Then, in February of 2019, an unidentified man shared an illuminating recording with detectives of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. The man, who had reportedly slept with both Linda and Mary Beth in the past, had recently broken off his relationship with the former, and afterwards they had a phone conversation that would bring light to Anthony's death. The woman claimed that she'd suffered greatly after her father's passing and was haunted by dreams of him in the room with her. As the conversation progressed, she told her ex that she couldn't take it anymore confessed, "I killed my father." It was at that point that the man started recording. Linda went on to say that she'd perpetrated the murder together with Mary Beth. The confession, which ended the sisters' flight from justice, led to their arrest in March of 2019, and more details of what they later tried to portray as a mercy killing emerged. The women had wanted their father to move into assisted living from his Palm Harbor condo, but he was adamant about staying, so they concocted a plan to put him out of his misery. They first spiked his drink with what they thought would be a fatal dose of sleeping pills, but it didn't work. Linda then stuffed a washcloth in his mouth as Mary Beth held his nose shut to asphyxiate him, ending his life. They staged the scene to look like they tried to revive him, went to sleep, and called 911 in the morning. The sisters, both in their 60s when the crime was discovered, each took a plea deal. Linda was sentenced to 20 years in prison, while Mary Beth was sentenced to 15 years after offering to testify against her sister. Number 2. Victoria K. Ostrich. Officers from the Waterloo Police Department in Iowa attempted a traffic stop in December of 2019 after identifying the driver of a vehicle as having an active arrest warrant. They tried to pull over 28-year-old Victoria K. Ostrich in the area of Burton Avenue and Dawson Street, but she fled and a chase ensued. Ostrich eventually went off-road and drove through a field, crossing a homeowner's yard. She then continued eastward and struck a snow fence before crashing into a tree, rendering her vehicle disabled. Ostrich tried to flee on foot, but was apprehended, and the police also found an illegal substance in her car. She was subsequently taken to the Black Hawk County Jail on a no-bond hold and charged, among others, with felony eluding police, interference with official acts, and violation of parole. Number 1. Caitlyn Armstrong. Since mid-May of 2022, Texas yoga teacher Caitlyn Armstrong had been wanted by multiple agencies in the U.S. in connection to the killing of 25-year-old cyclist Anna Moriah Wilson. The latter had been staying with a friend in Austin for a race and was romantically linked to 34-year-old Armstrong's on-again, off-again boyfriend, Colin Strickland. He and Wilson had gone out on the day of her murder, while Armstrong, who'd become furious upon learning about their relationship months earlier, had been tracking their movements. She used the app Strava, which showed the routes of runners and cyclists. Shortly after Wilson had gone swimming with Strickland, she was found unresponsive at her friend's apartment after sustaining multiple gunshot wounds. Paramedics tried to apply CPR, but she was ultimately pronounced dead at the scene. Armstrong's black Jeep Cherokee had been spotted in the area and caught on surveillance footage around the time of the killing. She was briefly interviewed by detectives on May the 14th and reportedly claimed that it didn't look good when they pointed out she'd been seen near the victim's apartment. Armstrong was released pending further investigation and within days sold her SUV for $12,000 and fled the state. The move sparked a manhunt that extended through multiple U.S. states, including New York and New Jersey, before reaching its conclusion abroad in Costa Rica. Armstrong had reportedly traveled to the Central American country using her sister's passport. She called herself Ari during her stay at Don John's Lodge in the small town of Santa Teresa, where she took a job as a substitute yoga teacher and also worked the front desk. She'd cut her hair to shoulder length and dyed it brown to better resemble her sister Christine, and also had a nose job to further change her appearance. A receipt for the $6,350 operation was subsequently found in a locker that she used. Armstrong was taken into custody by local authorities as they were conducting a routine check of the Treehouse Hostel when her fake name didn't appear anywhere in their database. The arrest led to her discovery, and on July the 3rd of 2022, after 43 days on the run, she was extradited to the US to face murder charges. Thanks for watching. Would you rather have your home raided by a SWAT team or be chased on the street by a roid-raging bodybuilder? Let us know in the comment section below.